In this video, I'm going to show you a part of your practice routine that is often underestimated or even left out completely. But I really also think that it is a big part of something that's really holding you back from growing as an improviser. It's essential if you want to learn how to play jazz, and it's also very important if you want to play other styles where you improvise. A common problem that I see with my students, but also with people posting videos of their playing online, is that they don't really internalize the things that they're practicing to the point where they can actually improvise with it. I think we often fool ourselves to think that it's enough to know what it is. So it's enough just to practice a scale or an arpeggio or learn a solo, and then by some sort of magic we will all of a sudden start to play fantastic solos ourselves. But of course, that's not really how it works. If you want to be good at improvising, then you also have to practice improvising. And if you're only doing that, trying out new things in songs, in tempo right away, then probably you're not giving yourself the room to really figure out how to make great music with the stuff that you practice. And instead you're left wondering, why doesn't this arpeggio or this scale work well with this chord? But this is really about how you practice, and you can practice in a more efficient way, and that's what I want to talk about in this video. My name is Larsen, learn jazz, make music. Let's look at this coming from two different angles. First, just from the basic raw materials, so coming from a scale and some arpeggios and really taking that and turning that into something you can make music with. And then secondly, also just coming from a phrase that you've transcribed, or maybe you found a great lick somewhere online or on a fantastic YouTube channel. To keep it really simple, let's just take a C major 7 chord, a C major scale and a C major 7 arpeggio. We want to use the scale and the arpeggio to improvise over a C major 7 chord. So we have these raw materials. If you've practiced the scale and the arpeggio, then you can of course play those, but if you stop there and then try and take that to a song, then you have two things that you've practiced. You can run up and down the scale, or you can run up and down the arpeggio. And that's maybe not the strongest musical statement that you can come across. You want to add something to your practice where you're trying to really create some interesting melodies and some small licks that actually sound like music and that you can later start using. And also you want to just practice the process of coming up with those licks. And the easiest way to do that is probably just to sit down, play rubato, and then come up with some short phrases where you're mixing the scale and the arpeggio and then keeping the chord sound in mind. That could be something like this. So play simple lines, mixing scale and arpeggio, get it to sound like a melody, listen to it. Don't worry too much about remembering it, just try and listen to it and hear what it is and practice coming up with similar ideas. And don't be afraid to mess around, because you're practicing making these licks. It's not really that you have to remember them or write them down and keep on playing them for the rest of your life. You're really practicing the process of coming up with those melodies, and that's what you want to do. And they're not all gonna sound great right away, and that's just a part of the process. So a big part of this is also hearing a melody in your head and then trying to play that. And once you start getting a little bit more familiar with that and you can play some different melodies, then you take this to a slow, maybe a static C major 7 chord, and then try and use some of those ideas and also just coming up with melodies while you're playing. If you always try to connect the things that you're practicing, like diatonic arpeggios or scale patterns, with actual improvising, then there's a much bigger chance that you're actually getting something out of it and that you actually learn how to use the things that you're practicing, which I think is a huge part of why you're practicing it in the first place. So this is really important. Another thing where you're also really starting to work with playing what you hear and listening to what is coming out of your fingers and what you come up with is that you can start connecting the different phrases that you're playing. And that's gonna tie everything together in your solos and make the entire solo sound a lot better. The same goes for a phrase that you've taken from a solo that you're transcribing. So the first thing you want to be aware of is that it has to be short enough for you to work with. If you want to combine it with the rest of your vocabulary, then it cannot be too long, because then it's going to be difficult to really fit it in there, and it's just going to be very unnatural and uncomfortable sounding if you're having a 2-bar phrase and then you want to sort of put stuff at both ends of it. It's not really going to work. You need to have something that's short, compact, and it really if you have a longer phrase, you want to split it up in smaller building blocks and work on them individually. But that really does work quite well and is something that's very useful to do. And a short phrase that you can take apart could be something like this. So essentially this phrase consists out of 3 parts. We have an arpeggio part that's played with a triplet, so this. Then we have a chromatic run from the 7th down to the 5th. And here we also have sort of a Coltrane pattern idea, so descending major triad, landing on the 9. So one way to get this into your playing would be to take this line and then try to make a different ending on it. So that could be something like this. So here I'm just using a scale run at the end, or something like this one, which is kind of like a Parker cliche. And then we have this one, where I'm using an E minor triad and then ending on the 6th of the chord. But we could also focus on the chromatic part of the line and then just try to put something around that. That could be something like this. In this video, I'm of course approaching it quite systematically, and I think that's a good thing to do if you want to work on something and you really want to internalize a specific thing. You can work on it like that, but you should also just be open to whatever inspires you. So if you're working on something and you're hearing something else, don't be so strict about it. Just listen to what you're hearing and try to play that, because in that way you're really developing your ability to hear something inside and then play that, and also really listening to what it is you're actually hearing. And those are important things to develop if you want to be a good jazz musician. If you want to have some more ideas for material that you can start making variations on, then check out this video where I have 25 examples of exercises that are all sort of chord movements or single note lines that you can start working with and making your own versions of.